with the princess, I get very anxious. I had an anxiety attack. Pretty much I can't post a picture of myself on Twitter without a bunch of people telling me how ugly I am. I'm hesitant to share a lot of myself with the world.
Rachel Zegler, thanks for coming on my show. I sold out years ago and I'm a coward. So you recently starred in the movie Snow White. Tell me, what was it like to play Snow Latina?
First of all, Steven, it was weird. But I did enjoy reimagining the character as a woke Colombian woman who looks like a fish.
That's what happens when you're a bitch, is that nobody likes you. I know it sounds crazy, but that's those are the consequences of your actions. That's life.
She was meant to step out with a radiant smile. Cameras were positioned perfectly. Journalists stood poised with notepads and microphones, and the entire room buzzed with the polished energy of Disney's PR machine. But behind the curtain, a completely different scene was unfolding. Based on accounts from two individuals who were present that day, Rachel Zegler never made it to the stage, or even out of her dressing room. They claim she completely broke down, both emotionally and physically, overcome with uncontrollable sobs and visible tremors. One eyewitness painted a heartbreaking picture of her gasping for breath, curled up tightly in the corner of the room, repeatedly murmuring the same haunting phrase, "They pulled it, they pulled it, they pulled," the whole thing.
The thing is, the internet, when the internet decides that they hate somebody, they hate them. They hate them, and that's it. And I feel like, especially with people like this that have like these types of viewpoints, I don't see her coming back from this at all. I think she is totally cooked with this.
The moment landed like a brutal gut punch, completely unexpected and devastating, because just moments before, Rachel had allegedly been informed that Disney Plus had officially removed the highly anticipated Snow White remake from their upcoming streaming release lineup. No formal statement, no public explanation, not even a whisper of warning. It had simply vanished. The very project that was meant to be her springboard into international fame had been wiped from existence. According to reports, security was called to the scene, PR team members scrambled frantically to manage the unfolding disaster, and one assistant's attempt to comfort her was met with a sharp and emotional outburst. Another source claimed the hallway outside her dressing room was cleared immediately, almost like there was an active security breach. It was that intense, that serious.
We covered woke Snow White, no longer white, snow taupe, snow beige, snow swarthy, snow's not swarthy. Some kind of sediment or sand that is no longer blanc. This young woman just explained the far more egregious changes to the story than the casting of this out-of-place actress.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
This is the central feature of the movie, is that it's a movie about love, and that she is reawoken by love. They're taking the love out of it. No, it's not about Prince Charming and love anymore. It's about what a girl boss she is, because that's what little girls dream of. They dream of being a girl boss.
For the people who witnessed it firsthand, this wasn't just an emotional collapse. It felt like watching an entire career fall apart right before their eyes. But even that gut-wrenching scene wasn't the most devastating part. What came next made it painfully clear that this wasn't some accidental oversight or last-minute change. It was intentional. It was a calculated move, a quiet but deliberate execution. And within the tight-knit circles of Hollywood insiders, there was no confusion. Everyone understood exactly what this action signified.
So early on, Snow White herself, Rachel Zegler, was riddled with controversy, starting with the fact that she essentially hated Snow White. She called the original story dated and weird and said that this was going to be some sort of modern take. I guess it was going to be like a feminist, like rah-rah, she doesn't need the prince sort of take on Snow White. But I'll just let Rachel describe what she thought of Snow White for you herself.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
It all began as a subtle whisper. Keen-eyed fans were the first to notice that the Snow White remake had mysteriously vanished from the Disney Plus preview lineup. There were no promotional banners, no teaser trailers, not even a casual coming soon announcement, just silence. Then the entertainment trades picked up the story. Snow White was noticeably absent from Disney's officially released content roadmap. There was no press release to explain the omission, no official clarification from the studio, not a single word. It hadn't been postponed. It wasn't listed as rescheduled. It had simply disappeared, erased without a trace.
Snow White now has a trailer. It's been playing before, the Wicked movie. If you've gotten a chance to see it, we're gonna react to some of it.
You'll be safe from all of us. We're gonna need your help. Find Snow White.
Can you feel the girl bossification of Snow White? I think we got like 2 seconds of the prince in this trailer, so who knows? Rachel Zegler said in her original sort of PR touring that she was doing on the subject of this film that the prince might be cut totally because he's not even important and he's a stalker anyways. Of course, there's the obvious question, like how are they gonna figure out the kiss and the meeting of the prince and the apparent stalking that he does in the initial film, because a lot of the leftist posturing surrounding Snow White initially was over that non-consensual kiss that exists at the end. How they're gonna sum that up and fix it, I have no idea.
Seasoned industry insiders understood the implications immediately. This wasn't a temporary pause, it was a full-scale purge. In Hollywood, silence is never accidental or impartial. When a major studio discreetly erases a $120 million film, from all official channels and communications, it's not merely being shuffled around, it's being buried. According to several sources reportedly close to Disney, what many fans had begun to suspect was true. The studio had internally concluded that the Snow White remake was no longer a viable product, not for theatrical release, not for streaming, and certainly not with Rachel Zegler still attached to the project. One veteran entertainment journalist went so far as to call it the cleanest corporate kill I've ever seen. Disney's top executives weren't interested in sparking controversy or publicly acknowledging defeat. They didn't want noise, they wanted erasure, and quietly, methodically, they got exactly that. Behind closed doors, murmurs began circulating throughout the industry that the very film once intended to symbolize Disney's progressive, inclusive rebranding had now transformed into something else entirely, a liability, an embarrassment, and above all, a dangerous financial risk.
So here are 5 reasons why everyone seems to hate Rachel Zegler. Because she was seen as unbecoming for getting the leading role in Snow White, only to often voice how much she hates the original. Second, people said she came across as arrogant when she was asked on the red carpet for Shazam, a Marvel film, why she wanted to be a part of the Marvel universe so bad. She just needed a job.
What made you want to step into this world of DC heroes? I needed a job.
Third, people say she seems very self-serving with this cropped, very viral video.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Fourth, I've seen people criticize her for starring alongside Ansel Elgort in West Side Story and seemingly standing by him during all the absolutely awful allegations that were going on and not condemning that behavior. Fifth, is it just misogyny? Some people say that Hollywood has just continued its tradition of hating on a new young actress. She has a whole hating fan base similar to the Hatha.
But here's where everything takes a dramatic turn. The risk everyone was suddenly trying to erase had a name, a face, and a public identity. That face belonged to Rachel Zegler, because whether Disney chooses to acknowledge it or not, this entire situation wasn't solely about a film being pulled, it was about her. She wasn't just collateral damage, she had become the center of the storm, and when the truth finally reached her, it shattered her completely. But the real question is, how did she actually learn the devastating news? And what happened in the immediate aftermath, in those raw, unfiltered moments following the reveal? What unfolds next is something you won't see coming. It's the kind of shocking turn that will leave you absolutely speechless.
I'm honored. I don't know why I sound so angry right now. I'm honored. Am I a psychopath? No, I've been getting a lot of questions about how do I feel? I feel amazing. We start kind of soon and I'm just like,
It was all meant to be just another routine press event. Hair and makeup had already been completed, and her team, what little remained of it, had carefully reviewed the talking points with her in advance. She had gone over her answers, rehearsed them to perfection, offered herself a reassuring smile in the mirror, and slipped into the polished look she'd worn so many times before. But then, with a single phone call, everything came crashing down. In an instant, the careful preparation, the image, the poise, it all began to unravel.
The most emotional experience that a person can go through to know that what they're working on is something that has reached a generation of people. And now I'm a part of that legacy to some degree. And it's not something I take lightly, and it's just the most emotional experience.
According to a source with direct knowledge of the event, Rachel Zegler was just minutes away from stepping into the spotlight when a Disney executive made contact. not face to face, not with any sense of empathy or care, but through a cold, impersonal phone call. The entire exchange reportedly lasted less than 2 minutes. The message was brief, direct, and deeply unsettling. It's been pulled from the slate. No public announcement will be made at this time. That was it. No heads up, no media spin, no explanation, just a flat, emotionless statement that changed everything in an instant.
Sorry. Rachel, you got time to sign some autographs for us, Rachel? Rachel, please. Rachel, you got time to sign some, Rachel? Hey, you on the way out?
According to an insider present at the scene, Rachel Zegler was just moments away from stepping into the spotlight when a Disney executive made contact, not face-to-face, not with any sense of compassion, but with a blunt, cold phone call that lasted less than 2 minutes, delivering the message. It's been pulled from the slate. No announcement will be made at this time. That was it. No prior warning, no spin, no explanation whatsoever. Rachel reportedly stood there in stunned silence as the call ended, then asked quietly, "What do you mean pulled?" But no one else in the room had any answers either. They hadn't been informed. That's when everything snapped. A nearby crew member described the shift as instantaneous. The atmosphere flipped from calm to complete chaos in a heartbeat. Rachel allegedly hurled her phone across the dressing room, slamming it into the wall so hard it cracked the case. She began pacing nervously, muttering to herself, then broke down sobbing, gasping for air. "They used me!" she reportedly screamed. "They fucking used me and then threw me away!" The staff on site were unprepared for this breakdown. Someone called her publicist, but she didn't answer. Another person tried to reach a producer. No response. Then Rachel collapsed, literally dropping to her knees on the carpet, clutching her chest and struggling to breathe. One makeup artist described her to media as looking like someone who had just been hit by a truck made entirely of betrayal. Officially, paramedics were never called, but a medical staffer affiliated with the venue reportedly stepped in to help stabilize her. By the time Disney's on-site PR team arrived, Rachel was silent, just sitting quietly, red-eyed and motionless. She skipped the press event, ignored calls and messages all day, and from that moment on, Rachel Zegler fell into silence. But this wasn't the first time she'd unraveled under pressure. The real story began long before Snow White was pulled from the schedule, because the backlash building around her had been simmering for months. The truth is, Rachel Zegler didn't fall out of favor overnight. While her backstage collapse seemed sudden, the public had already begun turning away from her, slowly, relentlessly, and in many ways, she had provided them with the ammunition to do so. It started with one controversial quote that quickly spread like wildfire. "It's not 1937 anymore. Snow White doesn't need a man to save her." Meant to sound empowering, to many Disney fans it instead came across as arrogant, dismissive, even hostile toward the cherished legacy that had made her famous. But she didn't stop there. In numerous interviews, Rachel mocked the original film, took digs at the prince, and appeared to wear her disdain for classic Disney like a badge of honor. Clips of these interviews were chopped up and circulated online. TikTok turned her into a meme. YouTube creators roasted her relentlessly. Late-night talk show hosts used her as punchline fodder. Even some feminists criticized her tone as performative, less about empowerment and more about ego. But it wasn't only fans who started turning away. Allegedly, Disney executives grew increasingly uneasy. Behind closed doors, some warned her team to rein her in, but either they didn't or they couldn't, and the backlash snowballed over weeks. The hashtag, "You're Not My Snow White," trended. Fan edits mocked her performance. Others posted side-by-side comparisons with Disney princesses who appeared to honor their roles better, like Emma Watson's Belle or Lily James's Cinderella. Then came petitions, over 50,000 signatures demanding she be recast, others calling for Disney to scrap the film altogether. Sponsors quietly started to distance themselves. Merchandise vanished from pre-order pages. And throughout it all, Rachel stayed loud, visible, almost defiantly so, until she suddenly didn't. Because when the online backlash shifted from noisy commentary to corporate silence, everything changed. That was when firings began, walkouts happened, and Rachel Zegler's name started disappearing, not just from trailers but from conversations. Behind the scenes, things were unraveling even faster. Snow White wasn't the only disaster. There were lawsuits, screaming matches, public meltdowns. She was losing control of the narrative, and even her closest allies were walking away. But the darkest moment was yet to come. As her career crumbled, Hollywood's power players were already making new moves. moves that made it painfully clear Rachel Zegler wasn't just being sidelined, she was being replaced. The Snow White cancellation was the headline, but behind the scenes, her entire foundation was already cracking. Her inner circle had vanished. Her agent was fired. Her manager was out. Her publicist reportedly cut ties after several internal disputes, all within a single week. No public statements, no farewell messages, just silence. Insiders called it a scorched earth reset. Others were harsher. One Hollywood executive allegedly told a trade publication, "She's radioactive. No one wants to touch her right now." And it wasn't just Disney. Reports from Broadway indicated that the Evita revival, which Rachel was cast in, had turned into an on-set nightmare. There were claims of explosive fights during rehearsals, co-stars threatening to quit, leaked audio of shouting matches that sounded more like meltdowns than musical rehearsals. One cast member reportedly told their agent, "If she stays, I'm out." The production went into damage control mode, but the damage was done. Rumors of lawsuits began swirling, financial penalties, claims that Rachel would be held personally responsible for breaches of contract, including a rumored $5 million fine for early termination. Sponsors who once lined up to work with her quietly pulled back, removing her from campaigns, replacing her images, cutting promotional budgets. Even her Instagram started to feel emptier. Fewer sponsored posts, less engagement, a digital silence, echoing her growing isolation. Behind the scenes, agents and casting directors were moving on. Whispers of new projects emerged, familiar titles, familiar roles, and Rachel's name was nowhere to be found. Instead, names like Jenna Ortega, Isabella Merced, and Ali Carvalho began popping up. The industry was recalibrating, and Rachel was being left behind. The girl once groomed for stardom, launched by Spielberg and crowned the new face of Disney, was now a cautionary tale. But while Hollywood was turning its back, something even darker was unfolding. This wasn't just a professional fall, it was personal, and the world was beginning to notice the cracks. Rachel wasn't just fading from headlines, she was fading from herself. In public, most of Hollywood remains quiet, but behind closed doors, the gloves are off. One insider summed it up bluntly. Rachel Zegler went from Hollywood's next golden girl to a liability faster than anyone they'd ever seen, and the worst part? She did it to herself. Executives are whispering things they wouldn't have dared say a year ago. Casting directors allegedly label her uncoachable, producers call her a PR nightmare, and others say what everyone's thinking. She's no longer box office safe. One talent agent reportedly told a client, "Avoid association at all costs." She's still trending, but for all the wrong reasons. And it's not just whispers. Meetings that once focused on landing Rachel the perfect role are now centered on quietly replacing her. Allegedly, Disney has already begun internal discussions about rebooting Snow White, this time with a fresh start, a safer choice, someone who won't spark controversy or mock the legacy they're meant to uphold. Jenna Ortega's name has come up, as well as Ali Carvalho's. Even Selena Gomez, a proven star with mass appeal, is reportedly being considered as the reset button. While those names climb, Rachel's is sinking fast. Even former allies have gone silent. Spielberg offers no public support. Her former co-stars remain radio silent. Not a single major industry figure has come to her defense, because here's the uncomfortable truth. Hollywood is built on risk assessment, and right now Rachel Zegler looks like a failed investment. But while studios stay silent and projects vanish, a different conversation is beginning, a more human one. Because what happens when the star you built up starts breaking down and the public can see every crack? That's the story unfolding now. Rachel's recent actions aren't calculated. They're emotional, raw, and maybe even dangerous. At first, the backlash felt nearly unanimous. Memes, mockery, recast petitions, parody videos racking up millions of views. Rachel Zegler became the internet's favorite target, a symbol of what many viewed as Hollywood arrogance wrapped in a Disney princess costume. But now the mood is shifting. After the Snow White cancellation, the Backstage meltdown, and the silence from her peers, something darker is settling in. And fans are starting to ask a new question. Is she okay? On social media, a quiet divide is emerging. Some are doubling down, insisting, "She asked for this. You can't be rude, smug, and disrespectful and then play the victim." But others are pushing back. They're noticing the change. No new posts, no press appearances, stories being archived. Then came a cryptic Instagram post. Rachel allegedly shared a black screen with no caption, followed by a reel featuring haunting lyrics about being forgotten. It disappeared within hours, but not before fans captured it. Some saw it as a cry for help, others called it emotional manipulation. But the conversation had already shifted. Reddit threads appeared with titles like, This went too far. A few influencers who had once criticized her started walking back their remarks, warning followers not to kick someone when they're already down. Mental health advocates stepped in, reminding everyone that public humiliation, especially on a global scale, doesn't just disappear when the comments stop. It lingers and festers. And here's where things get real. People close to Rachel, including one anonymous friend, reportedly told a gossip outlet that her family fears she's not speaking to anyone, hasn't left the house in days, and seems completely numb. None of this has been officially confirmed, but it doesn't need to be. Right now, the silence is louder than any press release ever could be. As the noise fades, what's left behind isn't just a failed movie, it's a person, isolated, alone, and uncertain of what comes next. That's the question haunting everyone now. Where does Rachel Zegler go from here? Hollywood is ruthless, unforgiving, and notoriously quick to move on. But people, they're messy, vulnerable, and sometimes just need a chance to heal. For Rachel, the next chapter remains unwritten. But one thing is clear. The princess story that captivated millions ended not with a fairy tale, but with a cautionary tale. A reminder of how fast dreams can shatter and how hard it can be to rebuild.